Which is the best between the recently revised Mercedes-AMG E63s or the BMW M5 competition? Well, in this video, I'm going to find out by comparing their exteriors, their interiors, their engines, how they are to drive, what they're like for hooning about it. I'm also going to compare their performance, their 0 to 60 times, their standing quarter mile times, and what they're like if you need to brake in an emergency. I'm Matt Watson, and you're watching Carwow.
Buying a new car? Then head to Carwow, and my team will help you find your next car at a fair price. Carwow, your one-stop car buying comparison site.
Let's start off by talking about the prices. So the BMW M5 competition starts from £102,000. This is slightly cheaper. It's just under £100,000. So I'd definitely go for the Mercedes and save myself £2,000. No one who is buying this car would ever say. However, the list price is less relevant because you can get some massive savings off these through dealers if you're prepared to haggle. If you can't be bothered to haggle, you can just go onto Carwow. You can save £7,000 off an E63s, which is pretty good. But on this BMW M5 competition, you can save, I can't believe it, just over £20,000. Now, if you want to see how much money you can save off a cool car that's fun to drive and delivers a lot of performance, but is cheaper than these through Carwow, I'll put a link to that car up there. I'm not going to tell you what it is or what the saving is. It's definitely worth checking out there. Click on that, you'll be able to see. Alternatively, at a later date, you can just go to Carwow by simply Googling "Help Me Carwow," and my team and I will help you choose the right car for you and get it for a fair price from one of our trusted dealers. Now let's compare these cars' designs. I'm going to start off with their fronts. Isn't it nice to see BMW's old grille? You're going to miss that. Anyway, both these cars have quite aggressive noses, don't they? So loads of vents, and the vents are all real because they've got huge radiators to cool the massive engines beneath their bonnets. The main difference is I think the Mercedes has kind of like a scowl, like it's like downturn, like, whereas the BMW is more like, yeah. Do you reckon that's how the designers, where they're talking to their teams to lead the design process? Do you reckon that's what they say? Yeah. Anyway, personally, I prefer the front of the Mercedes, though Lewis behind the camera prefers the look of the BMW, but Lewis is wrong. From the side, yeah, it's a tough one, this. Both cars are a bit low to the ground than the standard cars on which they're based. They're more aggressive looking because they have wider front wheel arches, though the front wheel arch on the Mercedes just seems a little bit more pronounced. When it comes to the wheels, I'm probably going to go with the BMW, just because of the design of the Merc wheel, the way they have this bit here in black. It actually makes the wheel look smaller than it really is. Ooh, it is a tough one, but the thing that probably screams it for me about the BMW is this. As standard, the M5 competition has a carbon roof. And carbon roofs are cool, so too are the M-style door mirrors with that extra element there, whereas the Mercedes mirrors are pretty normal. From the rear, there are a couple of things that I prefer about the BMW, such as I love the soft LED light design, whereas this is just a little bit more normal. And while they all have quad tailpipes, the ones on the Mercedes are actually a fake surround with just a normal pipe inside, which looks a bit rubbish, whereas these on the BMW are 100% authentic. However, overall, I just think the rear end of the Mercedes just looks a little bit more special. I don't know whether it's due to the chrome, the 3-point star. It just seems to work better together than the BMW. In terms of the overall design, I personally just about prefer the Mercedes, but only just. Now I'm going to talk you through all the chassis upgrades that these cars have over their standard versions, and also compare the two between the BMW and this E63. So the Mercedes comes with air suspension as standard, and you've got adaptive dampers as well, but the setup is stiffer than you would have on a normal E-Class. Also, it's got a 4-wheel drive system which can send 100% of the power to the rear wheels. In fact, there's even a drift mode which you can engage, which decouples the front axle, so it then becomes rear wheel drive, so you can then behave like a total hooligan. And here's a montage of me doing just that. Whee! The BMW M5 competition also has load stiffened suspension compared to the normal 5 Series. However, unlike the Mercedes, you don't get air suspension. You have normal coil springs, though you do get adaptive dampers. It's also got a 4-wheel drive system that can send 100% of the power to the rear wheels, and a mode where you can put it into rear wheel drive mode only. And so here's another montage of me hooning around in an M5 competition. Let's compare the car's brakes. So the E63s has 390mm disc up front, gripped by 6-piston calipers. I like the calipers in red with the AMG writing on it. And at the back you got 360mm disc gripped by a single piston caliper. Annoyingly, you can't get carbon ceramic brakes on the E63s in the UK. You probably can in other countries, but not here for some reason. The BMW has 400mm discs up front, gripped by 6-piston calipers. At the back you got 396mm disc gripped by a single piston caliper. You can get carbon ceramic brakes in the UK on the M5 competition. They cost about £8 grand. And then you have 410mm discs up front. Now, carbon ceramic brakes are good for if you're on the track a lot because they resist fade compared to steel brakes. They don't actually give you any better stopping performance, they just last for longer. Anyhow, let's compare these two cars' stopping ability by doing a brake test. Okay, let's brake test this bad boy. Full emergency start from 70 miles an hour. Here we go. Double foot braking. It stopped in 44 meters. That is pretty good. Now let's see what the Mercedes can do. Okay, now I'm in the Merc. Let's see if it can stop from 70 miles an hour in a shorter distance than that BMW. Here we go. Well, that was pretty intense. So this car stopped from 70 miles an hour in 43 meters. So that's a victory to the AMG. Now I'm going to compare the sound these cars make when you rev them stationary. Imagine you just bought this car, you want to let your friends hear your V8 engine. You're going to do this, right? So I'm going to rev up the Merc first. So go on, let's hear the AMG. This has a soft limiter at 4,000 RPM. And it's just been updated, so it's fitted with a petrol particulate filter, so it doesn't sound quite as good as it used to before. However, it still does do the pop and bang sound when you rev it stationary, so yeah, I can kind of let it off. It sounded pretty meaty. Now let's hear the BMW rev. Oh. So that's a bit more race car-y, but it doesn't pop and bang. And its soft limiter is at 5,000 RPM, which is a little bit better. It's a tough one. I think I prefer the sound of the BMW, but that's only when you're revving them stationary. It could be a different result when I'm actually driving them, and we'll find out about that in a bit. Sorry to interrupt the video, but are you German watching this channel and you'd like to watch some car reviews in your native language? Well, click on the pop-out banner up there to go subscribe to the Carwow German YouTube channel presented by a proper German person.
Und das bei einem deutschen Premium-Hersteller.
Go check it out now. Before I compare these cars' engines and launch them to see how quick they are from 0 to 60 and over the standing quarter mile, I'm just going to talk you through their interiors. So the Mercedes has quite a flamboyant design, the swooping effect of the dash, these big air vents, you get carbon fibre as standard. It's nice, and the steering wheel's lovely. I like the fact it's got Alcantara on it as well. I like these controllers. You can flip through different modes quite easily when you're driving along, and you've got these huge screens which dominate the dash. You can flip through different views of the digital dials, which I like, and I like the infotainment system. I find it pretty easy to just swipe through different menus, but generally I'm going to use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay in this car. There are a few things that let it down. For instance, some parts like there, which is in the eye-on, you can see that feels a little bit cheap, and then this button you press to open the center console, that feels a little bit cheap. Here on the inside, the BMW M5 competitions cabin isn't quite so stylish as the Mercedes, but I think the quality is deeper. So the materials just feel a little bit nicer to touch. There are no cheap parts for you to look at. For instance, the center boss of the steering wheel is leather. It's not plastic like on the Mercedes. I like the way we've got Alcantara headlining on this car as well, whereas it's just normal headlining in that Mercedes. However, if you want carbon fiber in this, it's an optional extra. Still, lots of the parts just seem quite expensive anyway, like the controls here for the climate. This big overstyled gear selector as well. Not sure about that. The steering wheel, it doesn't feel quite so nice to hold as the Mercedes, but it's fairly simple to use. And I do like this. You've got these two shortcut buttons there, which you can pre-configure, so you can just quickly go into a different mode at the press of one of these buttons, which is good. If you just want to control the modes separately, though, you do have to press this button here and then go through all the different settings, which is more of a faff than just using the dials that you have on the Mercedes steering wheel. The infotainment system on this car is pretty decent. I do like it, and the screen's sharp, responsive. However, I don't think it's quite as good as the Mercedes system, but you do have Android Auto now on it and Apple CarPlay, and they're wireless, which you don't have wireless connectivity for your phone in the Mercedes. So that is a plus for the BMW. What's not so good though is the digital dials. You just don't have as many options or screens or details that you can have in the Mercedes. You basically got this one display and then there's another display which is more sporty. And then we come to the seat. So I prefer the look of the BMW M5 seats. I like this little bit here. It actually illuminates as well. They look cool, but they're just not actually as comfy to sit in as the Mercedes seats, which seem to just fit my body better. Here in the back seats, the M5 doesn't feel much different to a normal 5 Series. So yeah, headroom's really good, knee room's really good. The seat base is really deep, so you've got lots of under thigh support, so it's nice and comfy. The only thing that really lifts the back and makes it feel special is this. You've got the M colours there on the seat belts. That's about it. Here in the back of the Mercedes, the seat bases aren't quite so deep, so you don't have so much under thigh support, which is a bit of a shame, but it's not a huge deal because knee room's still good. Headroom's good, although it's not quite as good as in the BMW, but I think that's because this has a panoramic glass roof and that does eat into headspace a bit. But it does mean that it's nice and light back here, and with the BMW, you've got a carbon roof, so you can't have glass, carbon or glass, isn't it? It's one or the other. Anyhow, the thing for me about the Mercedes is that it just feels a little bit more special for rear occupants than the BMW, which just seems like a normal 5 Series. You've got the carbon fibre here. You also have the white stitching. You've got AMG floor mats. You've got the light seat belts. You've got Alcantara on the seats like you have in the front, and the white stitching and white piping. It is just a little bit more interesting if you're in the back. The Mercedes also wins when it comes to boot capacity, because this is 540 litres of space, whereas this is a mess inside. Are these yours, Sam? Sam, would you like to take your things? There we go. Anyway, as I was saying, this is 530 litres of space. Yeah, I know, 10 litres isn't going to make a difference. It's how easy they are to pack, and this has quite a wide opening actually, which I think is a bit better than the one on the Mercedes. However, if you're really into carrying lots of stuff, the Mercedes is better because you can get an estate version of the E63s, and that has 610 litres of space, and that's with the seats up. Obviously, if you fold them down, you can carry wardrobes and stuff. Finally, the bit you've been waiting for, we're going to compare the engines. So, in the Mercedes, we have a 4-litre twin-turbo V8, which has been hand-built by one man who signed it, though he signed it badly, so I can't understand what his name is. Anyhow, this engine has 612 horsepower and 850 newton meters of torque. You've also got a 9-speed automatic gearbox with multi-clutches. This BMW has a larger engine, 4.4 litre twin-turbo V8. As a result, it has more horsepower, 625 horsepower, but less torque, 750 newton meters. I do like this engine cover. It's carbon fibre, though it's an optional extra. Anyhow, this car has an 8-speed automatic gearbox with a torque converter. Both cars do, though, have launch control, so let's launch them. What I'm going to do now is compare the cars 0 to 60 and standing quarter-mile times. I'm going to start off in the Mercedes, got my specialist timing gear up here. The thing I love about this car is it's so easy to launch. As long as you're in any mode apart from comfort, it will launch. Left foot on the brake, floor of the throttle, you're good to go. So let's do that. Come on, what are you going to do? Give me a good time. Yes. 0 to 60, 3.09. What is the quarter mile? Here we go. Quarter mile there. 11.23 seconds. That is good. Can the BMW beat it though? Okay, let's see what this BMW will do 0 to 60 in. So it's a bit more of a faff to launch. I've got to put it in manual mode for the gearbox, in its sportiest setting. Then I've got to turn the stability control all the way off, which is a bit sketchy. Anyway, let's do it. Launch control active. Oh, that picked up good. Come on. What we got? 2.92 to 60. What's the quarter mile? It's going to be good. It's going to be a good one. My gosh. 10.91. You cannot argue with that. Bad luck, Mercedes. Okay, let's see what this BMW M5 competition is like to drive. And I'm going to start off in chill mode, just relaxing, just normal comfort, because that is how you're going to drive this car most of the time. It just is. let's be honest. And it's pretty good, you know. The suspension, it is firm, but it's not terribly firm. So you feel a few bumps, and more bumps than you would do in the M550i, which is a better cruiser, but it's bearable, it's easily bearable. Perhaps the biggest thing though is the noise. You get a load of noise when you're like cruising on the motorway around 70 miles an hour from the tyres. They are pretty noisy, but you can daily this, no problem. And the thing about it is that it's always ready to wake up and just go fully bonkers, because if you go send, floor the throttle, gearbox like takes a second to register when you're in comfort, and my god, this thing flies. The engine in this is so strong, the way it pulls and keeps on pulling right up to that 6,500 RPM red yellowy line. In fact, let's lock it into manual and see where it bounces off the limiter. Oh no, it's definitely 7.5, there we go. Let's go into sports mode now, because this will be more fun. I'll tell you what, the gearbox responds really well when you've got it in manual mode, and you get like this jolt in between gears, which just makes it feel like a brute. And the grip you've got, there's so much grip from this 4-wheel drive system, it's really good. And of course, if you want to, you can put it into 2-wheel drive mode, and then you can drift this car and hoon around, but you're never going to do that on the road. That is just a feature for motoring journalists who get free tyres as part of their job, because no normal person is going to do that. Maybe once, and then that's it. But yeah, this thing, the way it goes around corners is very good. It just hooks up. It turns in pretty sharply as well. But the experience is let down by the fact the steering, it's just doesn't feel like it's connected to the front wheels. It's overly light. It's the weak part of the package, and I don't want to sound like some old bore going around steering feel and all that kind of stuff, but it does matter. It's how you hold the car, it's how you communicate with the car. You communicate with it through your hands and also through your bottom, feeling the chassis moving around. And that part, your bum's quite happy with this car, but your hands aren't. That is a shame. That is what lets this down, because everything else, brakes are strong, engine's strong, it's a decent enough daily. It's just the steering is lacking. That just spoils it ever so slightly for me. Damn it. Let's see what this Mercedes-AMG E63s is like to drive, and I'm going to start in comfort mode, because one of the problems with this car in the past was that the suspension was just a little bit too firm, so any kind of pothole or speed hump, you get a nasty jolt. But they've worked on it. They're giving it a broader breadth of ability. It's comfier now when you're in comfort mode, which is great. And because you get air suspension as standard, you get that lovely floaty feeling as you're driving along, and you really notice that on fast flowing roads with like crests and dips. It just kind of feels like you're flying up the road. I love it for that. Yes, it does still have a little bit of a sporty edge to it, but that's what you want, because it's the AMG version. You want to be reminded that you've got the sporty car, but you're not reminded in a way that annoys you. I don't think this is any quieter on the motorway than the BMW. You still get lots of tyre noise. With either of them, wind noise is an issue. It's all about the road noise, and it's very similar between the two. Now I want to show you this. So the gearbox, 9 gears. I'm cruising in comfort. I'm at 50 miles an hour, I'm going to floor it. It's a bit of a second. But the kickdown's good, considering it's got to go through so many gears. And that's in comfort as well, so it does respond quickly, and then the engine is on point, and it makes a fabulous noise. I think the engine in this sounds better than the one in the BMW. It's just more raucous, more throaty, more hairy chested, and that is kind of the theme with the car itself. So I'm now going to just go into Sports Plus mode, which is good for fast driving on the road. I can mix and match and have the suspension in soft if I want to, because the road's bumpy, but it's not here, so I'm going to have it in the firmest setting. Same with the steering, but you can do all that in the BMW. But the first thing that you notice really when you're driving this thing hard compared to the BMW is the fact that the steering is just nicer. There's more feel through it, a bit more weight as well. You do feel like it's connected to the wheels. You get more of a sense of what the car's doing, and you just feel more involved in the driving experience as a result. It's more of a sense of occasion. The chassis, it's great as well. You can feel through your bum what it's doing beneath you, and it is quite playful. You can get it rotating underneath you. If you're rolling it into a corner, you can get it in on the weight transfer. It's nice, it's lively, it's fun, and then once again, 4-wheel drive system just hooks up, and it can just rocket you out of a corner. And when you're really on it and driving it yourself, you go into manual mode, the gearbox really does respond quick. Once again, nothing in it between this and the BMW's gearbox. Slight difference with this though is it does redline at 7,000 RPM lock. It'll just sit there, but what's 500 RPM between friends, eh? They're very, very closely matched, these cars, but I just think this Mercedes just has more bombast about it. It's got a bit more personality. You feel like BMW is almost holding the M5 competition back a bit, so that the M5 CS, which is coming out, is the sportiest, the most extreme version, whereas Mercedes has gone, right, this is it, this is as good as it's going to get, the E63s, we're going to chuck everything at it, and it feels like they have. It's a fabulous car. I absolutely adore it. It's so good. So then, what's my final verdict? Well, these cars are very closely matched. However, the Mercedes just seems to have a greater sense of occasion. It just feels a little bit more special when you drive it. And really, at this price, these kind of cars need to make you feel special. And that's why the Mercedes AMG wins this test.